All right. So this is effectively in numbers lecture 6. We are in our week 4, by the way, and this is our lecture number 6. So a recap of yesterday's class. You remember we discussed about verbatim literal and escape sequences. I hope you found that interesting because it's another way of printing out the escape sequences in C sharp, and we can just we can escape the escape sequences by using this verbatim literal. The at the rate symbol, I can just write over here, something like that. So we used with the strings. Now you are familiar with debugging a program, and again, this is an important part of it. I am expecting you people to have a good understanding of the debugging now. For those new people, as I was just continuously calling them, now you are familiar with the debugging, how to run a code line by line and see where you are going wrong, where you are basically your program is falling up. Now you can just check any program that you have. That's good. That's good. So I mean, it was the first time for you as well. Like again, how it there were lots of people who said that it's for the first time. So all those first timer I'm talking about when they did this debugging for the first time. Now you are comfortable with that, at least up to the level that we have discussed. Now you can just put a breakpoint and just run a program and see that how you can. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I'm getting responses from some different people. So there are 3-4 people who have just responded. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, so if anyone is still having still problems, they can just discuss it with me in private maybe, and we can just find out a uh, work out a way that would be good. Discussed exceptions in detail with try and catch and finally blocks. Now I'm expecting that you people now understand what is try and catch block, what is finally block, and how do we just basically handle all the exceptions that occur. Okay, can anyone, just for a review purpose, can anyone tell me what is the most important or most most important use of exceptions? Anyone from you, especially from those people who have learned exceptions for the first time, that what is the most important thing related to exceptions in your views? Anyone? Maybe a one-liner answer in the chat window, or maybe if you want, you can just unmute yourself. That's not a problem. Yes, exactly. That's very good. The program ends gracefully with error descriptions. Program does not abruptly ends, abruptly exits. Rather, it goes gracefully out of the scene, right? It tells user what's gone wrong, and of course, then user will know, okay, I've done that wrong thing, so that's why it's just it has just thrown me out, right? So yes, that's good. Thank you very much. Now today we'll talk about something called inner exceptions. So we have just started to go into deeper into the exceptions, and we'll see that what does that mean. We'll talk a little about namespaces. We have seen a lot of namespaces. Like again, we have seen a namespace in every program. Today we'll talk about what are namespaces and how we can just cope with them, how we can work on them. I will just discuss few things about namespaces and keep few things for the future as well when we'll be discussing some advanced topics. Then we have object-oriented programming in general. We'll start object-oriented concepts today, which is very, very important. And today we'll truly start to see the concepts of class and objects, and also we'll see some more interesting things related. Right. So today's first topic is inner exceptions. Let's talk about the inner exceptions over here. So this is one program that you see. We were just working on this one type of a program yesterday. This is one program, and you have worked on that. Again, I gave you the example program for this athlete, this try. So you see this try function is doing what? It is just asking two numbers, converting them into integer, dividing that number, and producing the result. No big deal. What we have done rather is that we have just placed inside it try block. And in catch block, this is something interesting, which we did not do before. In this catch block, what we are doing is that we are defining a string file path and defining a path over here, again, by using verbatim literal. So let's implement that rather than talking about it. Let's implement that. So again, I will what I'll do is, again, I'll comment it out and we will just write the code from the beginning. Right. So what I'm doing is that I say a try catch block, right? And what I want is that, again, I will just ask for two numbers, like two numbers. Yes, Tanveen, thank you for your message. right? So let's quickly just do that, and right line, enter first number, whatever, I'm not concerned with the spelling. Okay, so and do what, like again define a number, first number equal to, so convert dot, remember we have just talked about this, convert dot to in32, and then console dot read line. So just take input from the user, right? And this is the same line that we have to repeat because I want to just emphasize on the other one. So enter second number, by the way, second number, and now here we say it's second number, right? So these are the two numbers that we have taken. And the last step again, integer result equal to first number divided by second number, and that's all. Console dot write line, and I want the result is 0. So result, right? So this is our try block. Now you remember I've given you a program yesterday that how many types of error might occur, how many types of exceptions might occur over here. There are lots of types of exceptions that might occur over here. One of the exception can be, again, as I said, someone enters a wrong value, maybe a string or something. So now what we are doing is, here we are doing something interesting, and we are catching a normal exception because we know that there can be multiple types of exception that might occur. And again, that was the task that I've given you in a program that you have to check for everything. Now here what we are doing are defining a string file path, right, equal to, and again, by using verbatim literal, we say C colon backslash, I have files folder and files file2.txt or file1.txt. I'm using the same file that I've used, right? So I just defined a path, and why we have defined a path, that's also you will know shortly. Now, so stream writer, as we had a stream reader, there is a stream writer class, stream writer class, right? And we'll create its object equal to new stream writer. And here we will be just calling what we have to. So what we can do is that we can just file pass it file path. I want to write to a file which is given over there, like file1.txt. I want to I want to type, or I want to type something into file1.txt, right? And now to write that, what we do is at sw and write is a function used to write in the files. So what we do is that we are doing e dot get type. What is this e dot get type? Can anyone tell me? Dot name. Now, exception, there are different types of exception that can occur. It can be a form problem, it can be a number divided by 0 or something. So I am saying that whatever exception has occurred, get its type. So get type is one method that will provide me what type of exception has occurred. Does that make sense to everyone? And also I'm taking its name and I'm printing that name into the file. So I want to print that to the file, right? So now let's put a line break over here. Just a line break, right? A one line break, or you could use. So we are just, so yeah, we're using right over here. So e dot message. So there will be a message with related to that one. So we are writing all that one into the file. So as sw dot close. You remember that we can just write down that one. Okay, no need for that. So this is one file that we are using. That if there is an exception, open this file and write this exception into that folder. Got everyone? Now run it. So okay, running one of my previous files. Oh, this program is just running. I am running this one. Hopefully should louder. Oh, good. Right. So I'm expecting you people to be typing with me and running the program with me. Anyone able to run that now? And I want to run this test4.cs solution. Not test4. I want to run something else. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I want to run this week 4 CS. I'm changing in this file, right? Okay, so you see here, this is our file, and I don't want any anything over here. So this is a program where I'm just taking the file and I'm just trying to write that into that one. Now let's run that and see what is going on. All right, so enter the first number. So I can enter 12, I can enter a 6, I get a result of 2. So far so good, no problems, right? But what is the problem that might occur if I run this file again? It asks for first number and I say ABC, whatever, DFD. Now there is something bad has happened, and it has not shown the exception. Why? Because we were running the catch. Is that right? We were running this. We were running the exception. So now let's go and open that files folder. That will show us that what is going on. So maybe it has written down that into that files folder, or like files file or not. You see here, this is my file. Format exception, input string was not in correct format. Why I am writing this in the file? Always people will do what? Whenever something wrong happens in the program, they will maybe send an email to the administrator. They will write it to some files, log files, error files, something like that. So that's why we are just doing it over here. Now you see here, there was an error happened, that there was an exception happened, and that exception was caught, and that exception has gone into a file1. I can read that file1. You see, I was writing where? In file1.txt. So it has just gone and accessed that file and written down that format.exception. Input string was not in correct format, and it has just gracefully exit out the program. Now let's do something else. Enter first number, the correct number. I'm just giving the correct number. Enter second number, the correct number. Or maybe I'm giving what? 0. So when you give 0, you are doing what? You are doing, of course, you are doing an exception. Of course, why? Because divide by 0 is always infinite value. Now, if you go to this file, close this one, because we have to again open it. Open that file. You see, what do you see? Divide by 0 exception attempted to divide by 0. And what is that? These are the two things that we have written down over here. If you see here, so what we have done? We have done get type name. So the type of error is divide by 0 exception, and the message is that attempted to divide by 0. Getting everyone? I'll talk about that. What is going on? I'll just let you know what is going on. But right now, just consider that. Everyone understand that? So understand that program is exiting gracefully. Program is not going abruptly out, and it is just giving us the message. Now let's do something interesting. If I come here and rather than writing the files folder, I am writing files1, which is which is no folder in my drive. I have this files folder in my C drive, but I do not have this files1 folder, right? There is no file1 folder. Now run this program. Enter first number, 12, legal number. Enter second number, 6, legal number. The result is 2. Third. But why did not get an error message? It has to go for the exception. Do I have file? No. No. Okay, let's see. Not giving that problem because I have just changed this one. Save this, run that one. Oh, can anyone tell me why? Yes, exactly. So it is not reaching to the catch, right? It is not reaching the catch. Thank you very much. Statement in the catch. So I did something wrong. So I did something 10 upon 0, right? Divide by 0 I've done. Now you see that abruptly program is going out. Rashmi, thank you. You see now abruptly going out. And what is that error? It says system.io.directory not found. You know what happened? Exception has occurred before that as well. You know, exception has occurred over here as well. But after that exception, we reached to over here. Of course, we reached into this one. And when we reached over here, it was running, and there was another exception being happening over here. Is that right? So here there is another exception that has been happening. Now to save myself from this exception, and everyone understand that now we have come under the exception, and here we find another exception, another problem that is running because of the folder path. The directory is not found. File1's directory is not available. So it says that I cannot find, and now it is an exception because we have not handled that exception. We have not handled this exception over here. Now, if you want to handle this exception, what we can do, we can do just something very interesting. We come here and I say if file dot exists. There is a property of file dot exists. There's a method of file dot exist. File path. Right? If file exists, I will make a body, cut that from here, right? And I will paste it over here. Right? So I pasted over here. So I am saying that if file exists, you just go and write on that file. And if file does not exist, else. If file does not exist, do what? You see, something new we are doing, throwing an error. So, you know, those who are familiar, if you are not familiar, I'm just telling you that we can throw the exceptions by ourselves as well. So we can make our custom exceptions as well. We'll talk about them in later part of the course, but we can just throw our exceptions as well over here. So we are throwing an exception. Throw new file not found exception. I'm just throwing a new file not found exception. And what I say is that I say file path is not found. Is that right? I'm throwing an exception by myself. So now what is that? Sometimes in a code, you throw an exception by yourself. If this does not happen, you throw an exception from my side. I'm throwing an exception if the file does not exist. So right, and again, another graceful way of throwing an exception. But again, this exception has to be handled, which it is not handling. But we are just doing what? We are just throwing an exception. And if we are exception throwing, let's see what happens now. Because you know there is file does not exist also. First I will go ABCD. I go to the second one, and then I go to the second one, and then it says now you see it is not giving error over here, directory not found. Rather what it says that IO file not found exception, and this exception is not thrown by the system. Who threw this exception? Who has thrown this exception? Myself, my code. My code is throwing an exception that now file is not found, and I have reached to this file. So it means you need to handle that one as well. And to handle that, you remember you can have multiple catches, right? So write down a catch over here. Console dot write line. Something wrong has happened with file. I don't know what has happened. I'm just giving a message, right? I'm just giving a message. And again, in the catch exception, what I'll do is that I'll say any exception is caught over here, AEXC. Catch any exception. Whatever is coming, we just catch that exception. Okay, right. So what is happening? You know, this catch exception is already handling that one out. So what I can do is that basically I can change it to something, and I can change it to some other exception type maybe. Okay, right. So let's run that and see if it works. If it gives error, we'll just talk about that. Yes, this is an error. Okay, just convert that one into file not found. So you remember that if you have something called file not found is not good over here. It can be format exception. I'm just giving a format exception over here, just so you know why it is happening. Because if the format exception or something, if the format exception will occur over here, it will just only catch over here. But again, we'll just talk about that, how I can just handle that. So now this is exception that will handle later on what is going on over there. So let's run this. Okay, enter the first number, and I see FG. We go inside that one, and it says throw new file found exception, and this exception is unhandled. It is handled. We have handled it. I don't know why it's not handling it. Let me just see what I have done wrong. I am doing something wrong over here. Let me find out what is that. Okay, so not catching this one. Else closed here. Catch closed here. Catch is here. It should catch that one. Okay, so let's see what is wrong. All right. Okay, so let me just see what's going on, why it is just producing that problem. Okay, why it's not catching this one? Let me just check it for this one, then I'll tell you. Okay. Still says that it's not found. Okay, let's run that. So right, so what we are doing over here is that we are trying to create a problem, and this we have just, you know, it still says file not found. I'll have to just look into it. I am missing something maybe, or I am just not passing something. Okay, so yes, I just missed out something. Let's see if that works. So whenever you are just throwing that one, we can pass the exception over here as well. Which exception? The previous exception that has occurred, right? So we are passing that one as well to our new program, but let's see, it should work with that one. It should work with exception as well. Let me just take it out. Yeah, now it should work. I think I was doing that problem, and I'll just see what is going on. Enter the first number. So if I say, for example, 12 and 0, so I'm then dividing by something wrong happened with this file, and again, and now we have something wrong. So now you see here, here we are just calling that format exception, and here we are calling this exception. And let me just check it one more time just for the exception that it should work. If it creates problem, no, it's not accepting that one. I don't know why it was working before. So what can be this class supply something? No, I don't want that one anyhow. So I'm just telling that. I'll just let you know what is going on. So because this is something I don't know why it's not working. Anyhow, so when we are just running that one, so it's basically it comes into this format exception, and again, if it does not file this file, it throws this file not found exception, and this file not found exception is caught inside here in this exception, and then it says that something wrong has happened with that file, with that file or something. Now, what is the concept of the inner, inner exception? Inner exception is that when we are just calling an exception by ourselves, when this exception, this is the first exception that has occurred, for which we have just reached, or for which we have just jumped into this one, into this catch. And now after coming into this catch, now from here we are saying that if we do not find anything, you just go and find out that exception. So now if you see here that now we have passed that exception, and what I can do is that I can just use this exception which has been passed from over here, this E, right? and I can just work on that one. So I will be just doing what? Okay, this key should be received in that one. Let's go and do that. Console dot write line, and we'll say current exception. Sorry. Current exception equal to 0. We are just taking this first exception at 0, right? And what we say, exe dot get type, right? And dot name. So we are just taking the current exception. What current exception has happened? So current exception, is the file not found exception, right? And now if I just go and let's see if it works, because there is something wrong going on. And if I say inner exception, what is that inner exception? Because that exception which brought our control inside that one. So inner exception equal to 1, right? So let's run that one. Exe dot inner exception. Yes, inner exception is activated over here. So let's see if it gives us dot name, right? So you see here what we are doing, and that we are just calling that exe dot inner function. So this exe is basically now what we are doing, that it is just accepting this exception when it was run. This exception is caught in this particular scenario. Let's run that one and see what happens. Enter the first number and I say ABC SDF. Okay, interesting. It's still not catching it. Okay, interesting. Let's just click. So right, so we have just deferred our inner exception topic for today because of some reasons, and we'll just try to come up with that topic again. So the next topic that we had to discuss in the sequence were namespaces. And namespaces is something very important, very interesting. I'm just deleting this one from here for the time being again. As I said, we are just not covering this one right now today. So yes, so let's talk about the namespaces. What are the namespaces? One of the namespace you find over here as well. So whenever we are creating a program, when we open up a new project in our C#, we see that there is a namespace already being defined. And it's lately, I think, not before 2015 or something, it did not used to specify namespace over here, but now it by default it creates a namespace of our project. So I've created this week 4 CS project, and now it has created a namespace of that. So what are namespaces typically? Namespaces help in organizing classes. So what we do is that in namespaces, we organize our classes. So if you see here, if you just observe this program, we have got a class, and the class name is, if you see, the class name is program over here. And this class is being maintained inside this main namespace, right? So a namespace is capable of capturing or having the different classes inside it. If you come over here, you see system is also a namespace, right? And now if the system is the namespace, it means the system will also contain some of the classes. And what are those classes that we typically use? If you see here, system.io, this is also a name, a namespace system, and inside that we are using this IO. This IO contains this stream reader and stream writer classes that we have used. So namespaces do what? They basically do what? They help in organizing classes. We can organize our classes into it. We can create a namespace like this. We can create something like this. We'll talk about that. And access the print. So now, if we want to create a namespace in our program, what we will do is that we will just try to create a namespace. And again, I'm just going out of this namespace. I'm right now out of the main namespace. What was the namespace that we had? This week 4 CS. I've gone out of it. And now here I want to create a namespace. So I have created namespace, for example, with the name project 1, whatever. You can name whatever you want. And I want to just manage something inside that one. And maybe inside that namespace, I want to just create, or maybe just we can create a project one. Okay, right. So now in this namespace, what I want to do, I want to create the classes inside that namespace, right? And there is another thing that I can do. I can even define another namespace inside another namespace, to have to manage some of the codes. For example, if we take an example, and the example that I've taken on the slide, that you want to manage typically two particular teams in a namespace, right? And you are defining a project one, the project one. So you say that this project one will contain one of the namespace of team one. Now, what does that mean? There will be a team one namespace that will contain all the information or all the methods, all the code that team one has done. Make sense? So I have created one namespace with the team one. I want to create another namespace inside that one for team two. And now I will be putting all those things in for team two inside this namespace. Right? And now come inside this namespace. And I say that it has a class. And I say, for example, it's class A. I want to create this class A for myself. And in this class A, I'm just defining a method. You remember we have talked about methods, and print. Now, let's talk about this hierarchy. And I'm just taking this only namespace over. So we are defining a project like namespace with name of project one. On project one, I want multiple teams to work on. And for multiple teams, I'm just creating different namespaces for these particularly different teams. And I'm just giving them a different team names, right? So I've just defined a namespace for team one, namespace for team two, and so that I may know that what is going on a typical in a typical properly class, right? So now let's do what I want to just do. What I want to just print something. Console.write line, and I will say that team one wants to print something, right? Team one wants to print something, right? And this is a method, and we are talking about this is one method that is being defined inside this team one namespace. So they have a class A, and they have a method inside that class. And what type of method it is? Again, you remember the static method it is. And this static method is doing what? It is just printing something on our output, and it's just showing that there is something has happened or something I want to print as a team one member, right? So we can do this same for the other namespace as well. So this was the team one namespace. Now the team two namespace, and again we can keep the class name as same, because what will differentiate them is the name of the the namespace. So now if I say class A, and I just define a public static void print method, and just copy this one. So team not one here, team two wants to print something, right? So this is team two. I just kept the name class A same, but since they are in different namespaces, of course that's not a problem for me, right? That makes sense. So what is doing now? We can just manage all the classes for the team one in this typical namespace of team one. Everything related to team one will reside over here. Everything related to team two will reside over here. And this is something not new, if you people remember. And when we'll use that, you will just see that what I'm basically talking about. Now, if I want to use them in my other class, in my main class, which is my main class, right? I want to use them in and print the values from there. So now, first of all, I'll have to use the name of the namespace. And what is the name of the namespace? If you see, what namespace we have defined? We have defined project one, right? The main one. So I'll say project one dot. Now you see that it's giving there are two namespaces inside that project one. Which one I want to use? For example, team one dot. When I press a dot, you see that it is saying that in this team one there is a class, and the class is basically class A. I say yes, I want to access that class A, right? And when I press a dot, it will ask me, like, there are some default options, and there is another option which is print. So I have a print method. I will just say that go and bring out that print method, right? Number one. Now let's talk about the other one. I want to print something from, from the project What was the name of that one? So our main project name is project one, right? So I'll use that project one dot. Now I don't want team one, rather I want this team two. And what method they have, like what class they have? They have a class A. Use that class A. And what method they have? Use that print method. Right? Now I've defined this method, and now I am just using that. Is it something new, or we have already discussed about it? Can anyone tell me, other than those like old guys, like the expert guys? Have we discussed this something like this before in our classes, in this classes? Or the question is, where did we discuss about this? Anyone? Let's see who remembers. We are only into week 4. So who remembers in which week we have already talked about something about this one? Not directly by calling them namespaces, but we have just used some of the concept in one of the lecture. Anyone? Can anyone come up with an answer? Anyone? I'm waiting for the response. Where did we discuss that? Do you remember when we were discussing in our second week, when we were discussing methods? We talked about the static methods. Does anyone remember that? No answer. Okay. So you remember that I talked about the methods and static method, and you remember when we were just calling those methods, we were calling them by the name of the class. You remember, by the program. And why we were not using this week 4 CS? Because we were already inside that week 4 CS. Yeah, exactly. So basically, what was that? It is basically what the program class. We were using that program dot method when we were defining it as a static method. I'll just quickly have a a review of that one, because that is an interesting concept. And if I come to this class program and I define another method, for example, here is the method. Here is the method that I can just that I can just use for myself. So you see that this is public static void print array. So you remember, we can call this function, this method over here, by using this name print array. And I can pass it anything, or I do not pass it anything. You remember from the last class that it will accept it. But this print array can also be called as. Can anyone tell me how else I can call it? How else I can call it? The way that we called it when we were discussing this one. Yes, the program dot. Yes, class name dot one. And typically speaking, originally it is coming from where? Week 4 CS dot. So originally it is coming from where? Week 4 CS. But of course, since we are inside this week 4 CS namespace, so we don't need to mention that. And that is one good reason I said that even you are not allowed to use now, not required to use program. Even if you just write down print array, it will accept that yes, print array is over there. But it's always a good practice to use at least the class name, for static arrays, for static not arrays, static methods. You remember talk about that? Okay, just delete that because I don't want to use it right now. If you see here, what is going on? We have defined a namespace with the name of project one. You see, namespace project one. And inside that, I've defined a namespace called team one. And inside that, I've defined a class. You see, a class. So it is giving the type. It is giving, this curly braces shows the namespace. It's before the name, curly braces, namespace. This team one is the namespace. And if you come to this class, it's showing that this is a class. And class has a different icon with related to it. It's a class. And when you come over here, it says that it's a void print method of, and this, it is giving the complete. Now, when you write some namespace in that complete form, this is called fully qualified name. This is called fully qualified name. Got everyone? This is called fully qualified name. Why? Because I'm using this project one dot team dot class. Now, can anyone tell me, can I use it without making it short? For example, delete that one and delete that one. Is there any way of accessing it? Can anyone tell me? Those old, yes. What is that? Okay, don't discuss that. So what is that? If I do using, right? Yes, exactly. By using, and what is the name of our project one namespace, right? And then what is the name of, like again, you have team 1 and team 2. So you can say team 1, right? And you can say what? Using project 1 dot team 2, right? Okay. So now you know that there is a problem, and I'll talk about that problem as well. If you do something like this, now you know this ambiguity has been created. Why? Because this class A is basically defined in both of them. So for the timing, I'll let you know that how you can just solve that one. But for the timing, I'm just calling this team 1-1, right? So if I do something like this, can anyone tell me what will be the output if I run this one? Of course, because I am just using this team 1. So both methods that will print out, they are from the team 1. And of course, this is quite logical, right? And now if I do something like that, of course, I'm not using that in the beginning. And if I say project 1 dot team 2 dot class A dot print. Of course, now what happens is that the fully qualified name is used over here, and now it is says that the team 2 wants to print something. Does that make sense to everyone? So now this is not qualified name, fully qualified name. Now this is the fully qualified. So fully qualified name, when you are using the namespace, and then the name of the, of course, if there are multiple namespaces, name of the multiple space, and then you are talking about the class from where you want to just bring out the method from. Got everyone? So this is something that we were just discussing over here, and let's see here. So now we have that we have made another this one, and now we can just use that namespaces over here. And as I said, I'll be just talking about namespaces a bit more, but now we'll be just starting the what is class, and we'll just talk about classes in detail and object-oriented programming in detail, and we'll see that how we can just create those classes and those methods, and we'll talk about that, right? So let's take a quick 10 minutes break. We are almost reached after the hour. So let's take a quick 10 minutes break, and then we'll be back, and then we'll just start talking about the classes and objects in greater detail. Any questions thus far? Or maybe let's have questions after the break. It's 2:03 in my clock, so I'll be back at 2:13 p.m. Break till then. Right. So we have to start the classes, or typically we are talking about the core object-oriented concepts. Now we'll just start talking about the core object-oriented concepts, and these are very interesting concepts. They're very important concepts, and if you understand them clearly, you will be good in most of the languages, because in most of the languages, the base, or of course the object-oriented programming language, the concepts are same for every language. The only thing different is, of course, the sometimes syntax in some programming language, or the other, making classes in some programming language is different than making classes in some programming language is different. Anyhow, so what we'll talk about is that we'll talk about in general, first of all, object-oriented concepts or classes or something, and then you can just and we'll just implementing that into our C# compiler. So what is a class? That is the main core important thing that you always hear when you just talk about something. So how just I tell students about the class is that um, we have a lots of data types with us. So you are known to class in integer, float. You are maybe known to decimal now. You are known to double. You are known to string. You are known to characters, etc., etc., etc. So there are lots of the data types that we have. You remember we talked about that first effort to create your own data type are the structures. Everyone familiar with the structure? Yes or no? Structures? I need yes or no, because if you are not familiar, I'll just give a quick glimpse of that. Okay. Okay. Yes, in C language, yes, you would have discussed little bit. Okay, that's good. Again, I need a response, because I will just talk about a bit about the structures. That's something that we need to take care of. Okay, you are familiar with that. That's good. So there are, I think, little bit. There are, I think, there are few. Anyhow, I'll talk about that. I'll just give you a teaser introduction of that. But again, I might give you a little bit, like again, more than little bit of introduction of that one, and then we can just talk about structures in some. So okay, so let's talk about something. First of all, other than even before structures, there is something called an array. So why do we discuss arrays? Because before this array, whatever data types these are, be it int, be it float, be it decimal, be it double, be it string, chart, everyone has a capability of having one value at a time. Understand, everyone? So every integer, float, decimal, double, string, all those data types, they can only accommodate only one value at a time. They cannot accommodate more than one value. So the first thing that comes in mind is that, is there any way that I use the same name to accommodate multiple values? And we have talked about that in the C# over here. For that, we create what? Arrays. For example, if you're creating an arrays of integer. What are arrays? A collection with same name. You can create one age array. We can create one numbers array, and you can store thousands of numbers in that same name. So same name, multiple values are stored. Do you understand the importance of arrays after discussing integer and everything? Because integer, float, and everything, they were able to just accommodate only one value at a time. We are not satisfied with that. We want to have a data type where we can store multiple values at a time. So we came up with this idea of arrays. But there was a problem with the arrays as well. But you call it a problem, or you call it a feature, that the values in arrays needed to be of homogeneous nature, homogeneous types, right? Remember, if one of the value is int, all the values should be int. So it means that it had this inherent problem that I could not collect multiple types of data together into the array. Now we started feeling the need of a data type that can accommodate multiple types of values in a single name, with a single name. So again, with a single name, array can store multiple values in basically collection of values. The problem was that values had to be of the same type, number one. And now we had the feeling that, is there a way through which I can store multiple types of values into one container? So the concept of structure came in. So heterogeneous type of values can be stored, heterogeneous types of values. Structures can store number one. So I'm just giving, as I said, I'm just giving a quick, the teaser introduction, or maybe a good introduction of structures. I might give you some of the examples as well, and I'll just talk about that first before class even. So structures that gave us a facility that you can collect multiple types of data together. You can have multiple types of data, right? So you understand that? Now, not only that, structures gave another very important concept. They were considered to be the first user defined data type. What does that mean? I know int, float something. I know int, I know float, I know decimal, I know double, I know string, and I know array. But array is again same data type values. But I don't know a data type that can store an integer and one character, an integer or one string, or maybe can contain two integers together, two different integers together. That is something that array does it for us. But again, a structure that can store multiple values for us. So the structures are typically that kind of thing that we use to store multiple values into it. And they are called, I can call them, they are called the first user defined type. First, right? So these were the first user defined data types. Does that make sense to everyone? And again, I will just give you a quick example of that one as well, so that you just get a bit of understand that what is going on and how do we just access those values. So if I go back to my program, so those who are like not familiar with that, they're getting the concept what I'm talking about. Okay, just make it a comment, and I don't want this one. Now I will just go over here. So what we do is that we just basically try to like define structures. We can just define our own structures, and let me just give you a quick example of that one. Yeah, so let's come over here and let's define a structure over here. So structures are defined by using this struct keyword. Struct keyword is used to define the structures, right? So I am saying my struct. My struct. Right? I'm defining a structure. So please bear in mind, I've just left these points over here. So first of all, they are of the heterogeneous data type. Heterogeneous data type, then they can store multiple types of values into them, right? So let's say I say, for example, I'm just defining a static variable, and I'll tell you why we can just define static variables. And I just give it a value, for example. Or maybe just don't give it a value. Static int x. Just give it a value because I'm defining it. Just leave it, not define a static. So integer, for example, you can say age, right? And you say, for example, we have got a string data type over here, string name. Now, what is that? I am trying to define a structure that has two fields on it. These are called the fields of the structure, right? These are called the fields of the structure. Is that correct? So now I've defined a structure, but I have not used this structure, right? When I want to use, so this is a data type that I've defined, and the data type name is my struct, or just call it my struct for everyone. My data type. I'm saying my data type. This is my data type, right? Because I said that structures are my data type, like our own data. Right. So let's come back to the main function. I just defined it intentionally at the very beginning, in the top as a global scope. We can define it anywhere, but we just usually define that like that. So now my data type, right? And let's see, create a reference variable of it. D1, my data type D1 equal to new my data type. What is that? I have created a D1 variable, which is this data type, right? And now I can do what? I can just do something interesting. What I can do is I can do D1 dot age equal to 20, right? D1 dot age is equal to 20. Why is it giving that one? Okay, so you see here what it says, that due to its protection level. So what we need to do? We need to define that public. And I will tell you this I have not discussed this access specification, but I'll talk about these access specifications as well in later detail, and then we'll talk about that. So public, I've just defined that public. So there is something called a public, there is something called a private, there is something called a protected. In object-oriented world, you need to tell explicitly that what type of variables are there that you are using, and for that you will just define that typically, that this is the type of value that you want to store into it, right? So now this is d1 dot age is equal to, and that d1 dot name equal to John, for example, right? So what we are doing, this d1 is a new data type, and what is the name of this data type? This data type name is my data type, right? It's same like, for example, if I say int x equal to 10, you know that x means that it is capable of accepting an integer value. It is capable of like accepting an integer value. And it's same like that. If I say this is an integer array, you will say that this has this capability of storing maybe 10 values, right? So you define that in that way. So we know about these data. But this d1 is what? D1 is not defined anywhere. And what I'm doing is that we are saying that d1 is a data type which has two typical values, and we can store an age into that one, and we can store a name into that one. So name and age both will come inside first one, right? And I'll give you another example of that one. But first, let's try to do that. So now if you just console.write line and you print a value, for example, you say welcome 0, your age is 1. And how we will access these variables? Of course, you know about that. Comma. So how we'll access? Of course, the same way. D1 dot, first of all, I want the name. D1 dot name, comma, D1 dot age. Right? So now let's run this one, see if it works, and then we'll just talk about it. Yes, you see, welcome John, and your age is 20. So what it is doing? It is basically accessing, yeah, like the same name has been used to store two types of values together. Now you can have multiple of this kind of structure, and you can just store the one of the value, and that will have reference to everything. Do you people understand now? Structure needs to define structure within the class as well. Oh yes, we can define this structure within the class. You are talking about within this class. Yes, we can define that inside the class as well, before the main method. You can define that. You can define it anywhere, but usually what we do is, again, the structure is usually defined as outside of classes, or outside of sometimes the at the very top, at the very beginning, so that the references is passed, and then we can have those values stored over there, right? So you understand this concept, that we have got this one, and this is the structure which is going on now. What can be a practical use? A quick example for that: struct employee. Now, interesting, I can just create a structure employee. What does that mean? I want to create everything related to employee. I say public f name, right? Sorry, public string f name, right? And I can just define maybe multiple values for that. Public string l name, last name. So public int, right, age. So anything that you want to store about them. So for example, you say salary, and you can say, for example, float height, whatever that you want to store. You see what is going on? Now we have got a data type with the name of employee. And whenever I want to just create an employee, what I'll do is that I will just, So if I want to just create something for the employee, what I'll do, employee, right, E1, or maybe like John, right, employee John equal to new employee, right? So I've just created a variable for the John. Now, what does that mean? I can just now refer typically to the John name. I can say John dot F name equal to whatever. I'm just taking a reference like that. Alex or whatever, right? John dot L name equal to John itself, right? Maybe. And then I say John dot age equal to 22. John dot salary equal to something something, right? And John dot height equal to 5'6" F. Since it's a float, so we'll just define that. So you know what is happening, why I'm just telling you. This employee is one name that is keeping, you know, different types of data types together. There are two strings, there are two integers, there's one float. Did you have this facility to do something like that before? Before discussing structure, were you able to store some like heterogeneous type of data together in one unit? No, we were not able to do so. So that is basically something that structure provides us. So what you can say, you can safely say one thing. You say I've defined a data type whose name is Baqad. Like, you know, like as we say that the name of data type is int, then the name of data type is float, name of data type is something else. In the same way, you say that my data type name is my data type, one of them, and one of the data type is employee. They are called employee, and you can define those variables by using this syntax. Got everyone? Everyone understands now structure a bit? No response. Okay, that's good. All right. So now what I'll do is that I will just, you know, as I said, I was just giving a quick introduction of structure. Now I will want to move to the classes, because that is one more important thing about the classes, and I want to move to that. Right. So now what I do is that I'll just open up, our new project, because I'll try to work on now a new project, or that will be our week 5. So I'm just starting a week 5 project now, and we will work on that, so that we have got now separate things for that. So again, I'm just starting a project that will keep on working in our next week as well. And I will just, you know, reference this code over there, and you will get the reference of this one. So I am starting week 5 CS, right? So because the object-oriented concept, this will go longer. So I want to just keep them in separate project. And I'll share that. Okay, so now you can just go home and study about the structures as well, because this is a very important concept, interesting concept. But we are about to discuss something above structures, right? We are about to discuss something. Now, after structures, people in object-oriented world, we came up with a class. And class is also, to start with, class is also considered as, let me just open up my PowerPoint slides. Class is also considered as a new data type having data and behavior. One way or other, structures could also store, the methods as well. But here we say that class is something that is capable of holding a data and behavior. What is data? Data is the fields. As we saw in the structure, there were different fields. Data is called the fields, and behavior are called the methods. So in class, what we can do, we can just collect the methods and the data together. Do you understand that the first point about class is binding of code and data? Right? What does that mean, binding of code and data? When we say code, as I said, when we say code, we are talking about the functions, the method that we have. And when we say data, we are talking about the fields. Right? So this is called when we have a collection of, or the encapsulation, or collect, a container that has the code and data together at one place. We call that as that we have got a class in it. And class is yet another effort to have what? A new data type. So remember about class, because people know. And in general, or in a broader aspect, what is class? Class is called a blueprint of some collection. As I said, code or data. there is some data over there, there is some code over there. Code will work on that data, and this class will be called as, this collection will be called as a container, which is called a class. And we do not use, so data is the fields and behavior is the methods we have just discussed. Now, class is not usable by itself. Rather, we do what? We create objects. Another very important part. So we create what? Objects of class to use into the class. Got everyone? So class is what? Class is the first and fundamental aspect of object-oriented programming. And in general, you can say that one of the concepts of object-oriented programming is encapsulation. Those who are familiar, I'll talk about that as well. Encapsulation is one of the features. Now, when we say object-oriented programming, there are certain features that we talk about. Let me just talk about them in detail because that is important. Whenever a language has to be called as object-oriented language, it needs to have these 3 to 4 features. Sometimes people say 3, sometimes 4, but let's talk about 3 features. The first feature is encapsulation. Can anyone tell me the others? Number 2? Anyone? Number 2? Data abstraction. Okay. Yes, that might be one of them. Anyone else? Good. Polymorphism. Let's talk about that. Because I said some people say 3 or 4. Polymorphism. And the other one is called inheritance. That's good. Inheritance. That's good. In general, we talk about that. But you say data binding or what you say data abstraction, that sometimes some people just collect them inside encapsulation as well. Now, the first basic concept, encapsulation, I usually called as encapsulation. If you find the definition, sometimes you'll find this definition: binding together of code and data. It's called encapsulation. And binding together of code and data, if you see here, I have given this definition that binding together of code and data is usually called as the class itself. Got it? So encapsulation is the concept of object-oriented programming that we are discussing today. How we bind together the data, how we just hide some data from the user, how we just hide the complexities of the class from the user and provide them easy interfaces. Another important concept, as I give that, when we say code, I'm just writing that yet again. Code are the methods of classes or class, whatever you call it. And the data are the fields of the classes. I'll talk about that and we will just see the example. Field of classes. Right? Just try to right. So, okay. It's stored over there. Okay. Annotate feature is doing something wrong. Okay. So now basically what I was talking about that now, but what a class is, that when we say about the class, we say that it is binding of code and data. A new data type having data and behavior should be over here, and then data is field and behavior is called. So constructor, there is another concept of constructor, and we'll talk about that constructor because we are just starting. Does anyone remember we have talked about constructor before as well? Can anyone tell me where did we talk about constructor? A little bit, not we did not discuss it, we did not explain it, but we had a little discussion on constructor somewhere. Does anyone remember that? While creating object of what? Yes, at the time of creation of object, at some places we have seen that. So now you see, special method that has same name as class, called automatically when we create object of the class and used to initialize the fields of the class. I'll first give you an example of the constructor in your real world, and then we'll start talking about that, right? Because you'll just enjoy this example. If I say all of you that I purchased a new car yesterday, first of all, you will congratulate me and then you will ask for the sweets, right? So I purchased a new car yesterday. So when I say I purchased a new car yesterday, do you have lots of things come into your mind that what type of thing I have purchased? You know, you have something in mind. You would have this is something with 4 tires. When I say a car, so you'll say, okay, this is something with a, or if I say that I purchased a new bike, so you will continue automatically that will come in your mind. Okay, if you have purchased a bike, it means there will be 2 tires in that. Let's talk about car. I purchased a new car. You say, okay, there will be 4 tires. There will be, of course, like seats to sit in. There will be some steering to run that car. There will be an engine. So there are lots of properties that automatically initiates in your mind. Okay, there are certain properties that you will ask me. What questions you can ask me? You will say, sir, okay, which company, which model it is, right? Which model it is? It is something that does not come into your mind implicitly. Make sense to everyone? You might ask, sir, what is the color of the car? Because color is not something that I've told you. I've told you I've purchased a new car, be it a black or any color. Are you people getting this example? Because I want to tell you the constructor, because constructor is a very interesting thing, right? So now, when I say I purchased a new car, when I say I purchased a new bike, motorbike, or I say I purchased an aeroplane, I've gone mad, right? I purchased an aeroplane. So you would have continuously, like, quickly something would have come in your mind. Okay, something that can fly, that can take you and fly above, right? Something like that. So listen about that. The thing that are initializing these values into your mind is basically, in our programming world, is called constructor. That when we create an object of something, it will set up some initialized values into that. Are you people getting my example? No one is getting that example. Looks like, because there is no response in the chat window. Okay, thank you, Baldeep. But I need response from the others as well. Thank you. 2 responses. There are 2 people woke up. Otherwise, okay, Abhinav is also woke up. Okay, so now what I'm saying is that constructor is a special method that is called when I say something. When I create an object of class, I say I purchased a new car. There are lots of things that have come into your mind, and they have the default values with them, right? As I said, number of tires, there will be 4 number of tires. Number of engine, there will be 1 engine. There will be some seats to sit in, maybe 4 or 2, but you have got some value for that. There will be at least 1 or 2 seats in the car, at least, if it's a sports car or something. Anyhow, but there are certain values that have come into mind, and there are certain values that you need to explicitly ask me. So the values that are coming automatically in your mind is the constructor of the class running in your mind. Do you get what I mean? That those initialized values that come into your mind. So in programming world, when we have a class and we create the object of the class, as I said, when we create the object of the class, there is a special method that has the same name as the class name, and it runs automatically at the time of creation of object, and it initializes the fields of the class. Whatever fields of the class are there, it will just go and initialize those, right? So now let's talk about an example, and I'll just run that example for you so that we can just see what is going on, right? So in this program also, if you see that we have got a class, and what is that class? Program class over here, right? So I'll go inside this namespace and I want to create my own class. So I create a class, for example, and I call it user, right? I want to create a class for the user or an employee or something. Let's make it for employee, because that makes more sense too. Employee, right? So this is a class that we are creating. So class has 2 things we have just discussed. Class has something called fields or data, and something called methods. So let's talk about, first of all, fields or data. So I say public, I've talked about public string, name, and location. We are talking about the name and location of an employee. These will be called as what? The fields of our classes. Or if I write correctly, what we call it? Data, right? From our definition. These are called data of our class, right? Now, if I write something like this, public employee, public employee. So this is, the name of this method which I'm creating is same as my class name. Everyone recognizes that? If it is same with my class name, it means it is not a normal function. Rather, it is a constructor. A constructor is typically a method, a special method that has the same name as the class name. And another thing about this is it never returns any value. up to the level that we even don't use, we are like even void is not used before it. Before it. Are you people making sense of it? I am not even writing a void over here. Why I am not writing a void over here? Because you see that this is showing some error. That constructor does not have this feature of returning anything. Are you people making sense of it? If a method has this capability of returning something, then you need to write a void, and if it is not returning anything. But right now what we see is that we say that no, constructor can never return anything up to the level that we do not even need to write a void before. Right? So no need to write a void before. Let's do something, and I want to say whenever the class is created, let's create one of the employee with some name, Alan, and location equal to Toronto, whatever. So I've created an a constructor, and I've given some default values to it. But this is the constructor, right? This is only a constructor. And let's talk about something that I might be discussing like later on, but let's talk about that as well right now. And what we do is that I want to define a method as well. Public void print employee. Right? I'm just defining a method as well. So is this a constructor? No, it's a general method of the class. Understand everyone? Because this is a general method of the class. And what this method of the class does is basically it typically does what? And it is used to just print the value of the print the name of the user. For example, I just write down one line, console dot write line, and the employee is for employee 0 resides at 1, right? Anything. And what we want over here is, I will say name, comma, location. I'll talk about this keyword as well. Those who are familiar, they would know that I'm just missing something. Anyhow, I'm just right now keeping it very simple. So I've created a class. So this is method of the class. This is a constructor of the class. So you remember method of the class, when we called method of the class, what we called that in our example, we called it code. Remember everyone? So this is our code of the class. I'm defining a method, print employee, that will just go and print the name of it. So now let's talk about this class in general. There are two fields defined in this class. One of them is name, one of them is location, fields of the classes, which is data. And I've defined a constructor, which will automatically be called. I won't be calling it separately. And then we have defined one another method that will just print out the name of the employee. And we have got only one employee right now. It will be just printing out that. Got everyone? This is the end of my definition of the class. Let's close this class, right? Everyone understand that? Now I come over here. I have to create an object of this class. So to create an object, you remember, employee, the class name, emp1, our first employee, new, and what is it here? You remember, it is the constructor name over here. Typically, we say that it's automatically called, but it's not automatically called. Of course, we mention it over here. But anyhow, usually it says that you are just mentioning the name of the class again, and this is typically a constructor. So now, automatically, employee constructor will be called here. Understand everyone? It will be automatically calling the employee constructor, which is over here, with this constructor. And when this constructor is called, it just goes and sets up. There are two fields: name equal to Alan, location equal to Toronto. It just goes and saves that location and those things, right? So now we have got an employee 1 who has a name set to Alan and the location set to Toronto, right? Now let's do something. emp1 dot. Now what should be inside that emp1? Of course, but we have just defined. It has method, it has data, because it's the object of the class. It can do anything. I'm not calling any other thing. Rather, I'm just accessing the print employee method. Right? Let's run this one. Now let's run this one. Okay, so it says employee Alan resides at Toronto or in Toronto, whatever. So basically, what is happening is that it has just run this function, this method print employee, and print employee was printing these values, and these values were set up by what? Set up by this our default constructor. So it means whenever I will create a new employee, if I create another employee, copy and paste this one, and I call it EMP2 and call EMP2 employee. So now if I just create another employee and I run that, I will always keep the same name because I'm not setting these name anywhere. Everyone understand that? Employee Alan resides at Toronto. Employee Alan resides at Toronto, which does not make sense, but we are doing it right. Is that clear to everyone? That thing I was talking about, whenever we create an object, constructor is called. And the constructor which does not have any value, it is called default constructor. Default constructor. Makes sense to everyone? A default constructor is called, and it just takes those two values and just save those values and print those values whenever just printing them. I hope everyone is with me because I'm about to just increase it. Okay, that's good. That's good. Now constructor can be overloaded. We can overload the constructors as well. What does that mean? I can create another constructor with the same name, of course, and with different behavior. What is the different behavior? I say that it will accept a string. I will call same name, string name, and it will accept string location. It is called overloading of something, overloading of constructor. I'm doing overloading. I'm doing constructor overloading over here. And what is overloading? Those who are not familiar, I will just give and we have not talked about that as well. But I will just again explain that when we'll be just discussing polymorphism. But right now I'm telling, because employee, I'm calling the same name using the same name but different signature. So this is called overloading of something. Overloading of method is also possible, and overloading of constructor is also possible. And of course, the constructor is a method of type. It's not something special. Special means it's a special method, but it's another constructor. So now I do something like that. I want to set up name equal to name and location equal to location. Now problem will start coming. You see, now there is a problem. This name and this location, these are those values that are being passed to this employee constructor. Does that make sense? And this name and this location is the fields of the classes. People understanding what I'm trying to say? So remember, we use a special keyword in our constructor, in our methods to refer to particular values. What is that? We use basically a keyword. This is called this keyword. This dot name, this dot location. And typically, whenever we are defining that, we typically try to use that with everyone. This dot location equal to Toronto. Are you people getting that what I'm saying? This dot name. Whenever you are calling this function, this method, this constructor with whatever object, this dot name represents this one, this name. Everyone getting that? So so this basically refers to what? Contextually, what object you are talking about. Contextual object. Whatever object you are calling it for, it will just set up those values. Now, and not only that one, of course, because again, as I said, all these methods that we are defining will use this dot name. Why? Because we want to access that for particular object, the particular object which you have just accessed, you have created. Now run this one. Not run this one. Employee 1 is the automatical employee, and now here I'm just passing some values. I say John, and I say, for example, London. Right? So I pass two values, John and London. Right? So now let's run it. So do you see that the employee Alan resides at Toronto, the employee John resides at London. So for example, what is going on? Now we have got, let me just set that up. Right. So you see here, So now this first employee, when I call this one, automatically this method is called, this constructor is called, and this setup, this dot name. People understanding what is this doing over here? This dot name. When you are making EMP1, EMP1 represents this. So this dot name for the EMP1, just set up the name equal to Allen and set up the location equal to Toronto. But when you are and when you call this EMP1 print employee, it will go to the this employee, this dot employee, this dot name, this dot location. So it means that it is asking for its own location and name. And what is that set up to? This is set up to Allen and Toronto. Understand, everyone? And when you are creating an object, something like this, EMP2, and you are creating that object by using automatically what will call employee constructor with parameters will call. You understand? It is not the default constructor. This is called, let me tell you what this is called. This constructor is called parameterized constructor. This is not default constructor. It is also overloading, and also it is called parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. Now both of them are running, and now let me show you. Okay, so if I do not call this function, I want to just tell you a few important things. Will I get the output of these two objects, or can I get the output of these objects without using this like the print function? Can I get the output over here? Can anyone tell me? No one is able to tell me. Static. Okay, by calling it in the constructor. Okay, anything else? Function. If I don't want to call the function, can I do something like that? Please let me know. Write ln, and I say employee 0 lives in 1, comma. Can anyone tell me? Can I just directly print those values as well? So if I say emp1 dot, yes, exactly, emp1 dot name and emp1 dot location. Right line employ. So now emp2 dot name, emp2 dot location. Okay, something wrong. Extra. Now you see here. Can I access that one? So remember, yes, I can do something like that as well. And I am just not using this print employee method. And of course, if you think, because I'm not calling it, I can just, say that I don't want this method. Anyhow, I can say that I don't want this method. I just want this. I can just print them like this. So the thing to consider is that the thing that I want you to understand is that whenever a constructor is called, be it the default constructor or be it the parameterized constructor, they set up the values of the variables. You see, they are setting up the value. Default constructor is setting value by itself, while as this constructor is setting up value of the particular that you are passing it. How many of you understand that? You can write a yes in the chat window. That's good. That's good. That's very nice. Okay, that's a good. That's a real success if you people are understanding that. Krupa, thank you, Sarita. That's very good. So now it is basically, I've just discussed what I've just discussed about the default constructor. I've discussed about, and a very interesting thing over here. When you just have created these objects, you know that this emp1 will be showing you all the options that we have. It's showing all those things. You can just call emp1 dot. So what I can do, if I say emp1 dot name Smith, if I do something like that, can you guess what will be the output now? Will it be Smith or will it be Allen for the employee 1? What should be the output? Smith. Let's see. Let's run that. So you see, it's basically Smith over here. And why Smith over here? Because I have explicitly, by using the object, I have gone and changed that value which was set by the. So it is not something that if you have set up a value by the default constructor and you cannot change that. You can change any particular value if you want. That you can always do that. Right? And same goes with employee 2 as well. If I just come here and I say emp2 dot location, I want to change this location from London to, for example, I say whatever, Kitchener, right? And I set that to Kitchener, and now I save it, and now I turn, of course, now I've changed the second value for the location for the second emp2. I was talking about emp2. So emp2 lives in Kitchener. Why? Because now you have explicitly changed those values. Is that right? Everyone understand that? So as I said, I'm calling it this week 5 CS, and I will be just sharing this file with you. And today I'll be just keeping till this point. I would like you people to now practice on all those things. And those who have not sent me the questions, 2 questions, they should work on that. And you should practice about the structure as well. You should practice about this one. I will share this file, and this file, all the concepts that are almost discussed in it, I have just tried to cover them over here. Parameterized constructor is what? Here I just introduced this method. What is this? The problem is that solution is this. So we use this dot name and this dot location, right? And then we have both user and user string together is overloading. And I told you, here I've just given the example of user. Here, there I am using an employee example. So if you are using this employee and this employee, you are doing what? You are trying to do the overloading. And this is called the constructor overloading specifically. And we can talk about the yes. So there is one thing, static constructor, that I've not discussed, and I'll discuss that maybe in the next class. So in next class, I will just I'll take out that that inner exception topic as well. We have the solution as well. Some student has also shared that solution, and I will just start from the static constructor and try to come across these constructor and all this. So I'll be keeping this to this point, and I will just for the timing, I'll just take out this this static. I'll just later on take it out, and I will share this file with you people on our week 4. Right. So any questions? I'll share this code as well and the previous one as well. Week 4 CS and week 5 CS. Both of the codes I'll share. Any questions thus far?